High Evolutionary. High Evolutionary Herbert Edgar Wyndham is a fictional character appearing in American comic books published by Marvel Comics. Publication history. The High Evolutionary was first mentioned in the Mighty Thor, #133, October 1966, first appears in the Mighty Thor #134, November 1966, and was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. His minions appeared before him but only alluded to him in issue #132. Fictional character biography. Herbert Edgar Wyndham was born in Manchester, England. While a student at Oxford in the 1930s, he took an interest in the work of genetic biologist Nathaniel Essex and began experimenting with genetic manipulation, building a machine that he called the genetic accelerator, with which he attempted to evolve the rats in his mother's London basement. While attending a genetics conference in Geneva, Wyndham was approached by a mysterious man who was in truth the outcast inhuman geneticist Feeder, who handed to him papers containing blueprints for cracking the genetic code. With this information to bolster his experiments, Wyndham successfully developed a serum he dubbed Isotope A. Although expelled from the university for his single-mindedness, he finally succeeded in evolving his pet Dalmatian Dempsey into a humanoid life form with the intelligence of a chimpanzee. However, Dempsey was shot by poachers, and Wyndham realized that such creatures as he would create would have no place in the human world. In partnership with scientist Jonathan Drew, father of Jessica Drew, Wyndham moved his experiments to the seclusion of Wundagore Mountain in the small Balkan nation of Transy. Discovery of uranium on the land inherited by Drew's wife provided vast funding, and they bought more land from local Baron Gregor Russoff. Assembling a citadel of science designed by German scientist Horace Grayson, father of the future Marvel Boy, and built by Moloid slaves supplied by Feeder, the pair continued their experiment until Drew's daughter fell ill from uranium poisoning and was placed into suspended animation to save her life. Subsequently, Drew's wife was attacked and killed by a werewolf, Russoff himself, victim of a family curse, and Drew left Wundagore. Wyndham, on the other hand, developed a suit of protective silver armor for himself and continued his work. Now joined in his work by research assistant Miles Warren, who would later become Jackal, Wyndham was able to make more and more radical breakthroughs, including the genetic acceleration of some local animals into the half-human, half-animal beings that he dubbed his new men. When Jonathan Drew returned to Wundagore, where he was possessed by the ghost of the 6th century magician Magnus, he warned that the citadel had been constructed upon the place where the malevolent elder god Seathon had been banished. He began to train the new men in the ways of combat and chivalry of his time, until they eventually came to refer to themselves as the Knights of Wundagore and to Wyndham as the Lord High Evolutionary. In 1958, Magnus's fears came to pass when Baron Russoff attempted to use the ancient magical tome known as the Darkhold to cure himself of his lycanthropy, inadvertently freeing Seathon from imprisonment. The knights held him off and Magnus was able to rebind Seathon. However, on this same night, a pregnant woman named Magda sought refuge at the citadel and gave birth to twin children there. Although she fled after childbirth, the moment of Seathon's defeat coincided with the birth of the children, and the baby girl was touched with the demon's magic. Wyndham attempted to find foster parents for the children, but when met with failure, they were placed in stasis for decades until suitable candidates were found. Raised by Roma Django and Maria Maximoff, the twins grew up to be the superheroes Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch, the latter wielding chaos magic as a result of Seathon's influence. CounterEarth. In the modern era, the High Evolutionary encountered the Asgardian thunder god. Alongside Thor, the High Evolutionary battled the man-beast, one of the new men, and his evil new men. Wyndham eventually saw the world as a far too confining place, so he converted his scientific research citadel into a spaceship, exploring the stars with his new men. He later settled his new men on a planet, Wundagore Roman II, while he stayed on one of the planet's moons and began work on a detailed replica of Earth to be located on the opposite side of the Sun. There his new men regressed to bestial behavior and revolted against him. He captured the Hulk, intending to evolve him forward by 1,000,000 years. However, his experiment was interrupted by the new men, who fatally wounded their former master. In desperation, he performed the experiment meant for the Hulk on himself, evolving into a godlike being. In this enlightened state, he was repulsed by his tampering with evolution, and devolved the surviving new men before willing his own existence to dissolve and become one with the cosmos. The High Evolutionary eventually returned to human form and finished his creation, CounterEarth. Although CounterEarth was supposed to be a temporary structure that would be evolved into a paradise, the man-beast corrupted the process, and CounterEarth became an imperfect world. By this time, the High Evolutionary had adopted Adam Warlock and bestowed him with the Soul Gem, dispatching him to redeem CounterEarth. The High Evolutionary aided Adam Warlock against Man-Beast and his agents. Eventually, one of Galactus's heralds discovered this CounterEarth. Galactus declared that CounterEarth was ideally suited for his sustenance, just as the real Earth. The High Evolutionary faced Galactus in battle and lost, while the Fantastic Four and Gore tried to prevent Galactus from devouring CounterEarth. Eventually, the Impossible Man tricked the World Devourer to seek sustenance from the Impossible Man's world, pop-up, leading to a fatal condition. Out of compassion, the High Evolutionary saved Galactus by evolving him into living energy that was eventually recollected by Galactus's world ship. During the earliest phases of its construction, the High Evolutionary's CounterEarth was aggressively targeted for collection by the Beyonders, not to be confused with the Beyonder. Agents of the Beyonders manipulated Adam Warlock into murdering the High Evolutionary to allow theft of CounterEarth, but he was revived by Moondragon and Warlock's counterpart, Her. When the High Evolutionary discovered the disappearance of CounterEarth, alongside the Thing, Alicia Masters, Starhawk, Moondragon, and Her, the High Evolutionary pursued the Beyonders to rescue his world. When the High Evolutionary arrived at the Beyonders Planet Museum, he himself reported that his mind snapped when he witnessed the scope of their powers and how effectively insignificant he was compared to these alien beings. It is this encounter that marks the beginning of the High Evolutionary's mental instability. Although the High Evolutionary claimed that the Beyonders considered CounterEarth an interesting but primitive work by a talented provincial, there has not been an explanation as to why they wished to interrupt the project even before the High Evolutionary had introduced life onto the new world. For unknown reasons, the Beyonders placed all life on CounterEarth into stasis and later allowed the planet to be destroyed during the Infinity Gauntlet conflict, although they could easily have prevented it. The High Evolutionary War. The High Evolutionary had become increasingly unstable and maniacal. His attempt to end his life was prevented by his suit. He returned to Earth, hoping to find something strong enough to overcome his armor. He goaded the Hulk into attacking him, and Hulk succeeded in smashing his armor. The malfunctioning armor then devolved the High Evolutionary. However, the suit's circuits reorganized and restored the High Evolutionary to his previous state. His death and subsequent rebirth gave the High Evolutionary a new insight into the future of mankind. Rather than being a benevolent yet distant protector, as he had been with his new men, he would take a direct hand in molding the future of humanity so that they might one day be as powerful as the Beyonders he had witnessed. The High Evolutionary later came into conflict with a number of superheroes, notably the Reserve Avengers and Adam Warlock, when he tried to forcibly mutate or evolve the entire population of the Earth with his evolution bomb. The Avengers stopped him, though the High Evolutionary and Hercules were exposed to the High Evolutionary's Genesis chamber and became more than a god, evolving out of existence. The evolved essences of the High Evolutionary and Hercules were harvested by the Celestials and imprisoned and manipulated for unknown purposes in the Black Galaxy. Eventually both were returned to human form, and the High Evolutionary returned to space with the Knights of Wundagore. After Thor shaved his beard, One of the new men brought the shaving bowl containing Thor's blood and hair to Count Tager as part of the High Evolutionary's plot to create a new race of immortals. After his liberation, the High Evolutionary decided that rather than advancing humanity, he would create all new gods and immortals using the unique matter he and his creations were on hand. At one point, Ego the living planet was investigated by the High Evolutionary, who observed Ego while a titanic, cloud-like entity which he tentatively designated Super-Ego absorbed Ego. The High Evolutionary theorized that there was more than one ego, a notion supported by its apparently erratic behavior over the years, the various origin stories known about it, and by the fact that an ego appeared after this one was destroyed by its parent and that they might all stem from the superego. His mental instability progressed to the point that the High Evolutionary became infatuated with Shanna, wife of Khazar. Infused with the power of the Savage Lands terraformer commissioned by the Beyonders, she had become much like the High Evolutionary himself, powerful, well-meaning, and mentally unstable. The two became obsessed with each other and nearly departed Earth to create a new world of their own, but Khazar convinced Shanna otherwise. The High Evolutionary repented, agreeing to return Shanna to her normal state once he realized, despite his mania, that the relationship should not be pursued. The High Evolutionary once helped to restore the Savage Land and its inhabitants after the engines that kept the volcanoes active were demolished by Terminus. Subsequent whereabouts, whereabouts, characterization, powers and abilities. The High Evolutionary has evolved his intelligence to the upper limit of human potential, and is the only human whose intelligence and knowledge has been listed as equal to certain cosmic entities. He is considered the leading geneticist in the Marvel Universe and is vastly knowledgeable in biology, chemistry, medicine, physics, engineering, human psychology, computer science, and cybernetics. Due to experimentation on his own genome, his highly enhanced brain and cybernetic exoskeleton, the High Evolutionary has demonstrated God-like powers, including the ability to evolve and devolve life forms, superhuman strength and durability, manipulating matter at a subatomic level, energy manipulation and projection, cosmic awareness. On one occasion, he managed to hold his own against Galactus for a prolonged time before being defeated. Of note, the High Evolutionary has forged weapons for his new men that show some anti-mystical properties, as demonstrated by a lance wielded by the beast that was actually able to damage the Darkhold. His exoskeleton provides him with an uncanny degree of protection from attacks and also provides life support, filtering/recycling his air and providing sustenance when needed. If he is badly damaged, the suit can heal his wounds and can completely restore him to life using records of his genome and brain activity patterns, as in one instance the suit restored him fully after he had attempted to commit suicide by destroying his own body. Personality. The High Evolutionary's character has varied between that of a weary, well-meaning creator to that of a mad scientist who is willing to do whatever he considers necessary to further his goals of evolving a better, less brutal world. He has great respect for the process of evolution, but is also deeply troubled by the immense amount of death and suffering required for such slow progress. See the Quicksilver series. Although menacing and arrogant during his maniacal phases, the High Evolutionary's history also contains more than one example of his desire to be responsible, creative, and kind. Most Marvel writers have resisted portraying him as a standard fair villain, thereby adding levels of sympathy and complexity to the character. The High Evolutionary has been manipulated and driven to insanity by both the Beyonders and the Celestials, cosmic races that have interfered with human evolution in the past, indicating that his work might perhaps be a threat to their own. Even at his most unstable, the High Evolutionary has always demonstrated a paternal love toward even his most flawed creations. He rehabilitated Nobilis, has attempted to heal Count Tager and the God Pack, and has spared the man-beast his life despite multiple attempts to murder him. At one point, he offered to and did restore the savage land after it was destroyed by Terminus, even though it had been created by the very race that had confiscated and then destroyed his own beloved creation, CounterEarth. The High Evolutionary played a key role in saving the Earth from C8 Thon and rescued Galactus from death despite his attempts to consume CounterEarth. He has served as a benevolent father figure to several characters, including Adam Warlock, Quicksilver, Spider-Woman, Wolverine, and Thor, often charging them with tasks that lead to their personal growth as individuals and heroes. Along these lines, he has taken a pointed interest in developing a sense of nobility and decency in his creations, most notably the New Men. At times, the High Evolutionary has feigned indifference to the fate of others when his own safety is at stake, only to reveal a considerably more benign agenda later. See the Annihilation, Conquest series. More frequently, he has shown a sympathetic and protective concern for the defenseless. On several occasions, he has gone to considerable lengths to protect young children, including the critically ill Jessica Drew, Wanda, and Pietro Maximoff, and Pietro's daughter Luna. He gave Magda shelter from the elements without hesitation, risked death to fight Galactus over CounterEarth, and literally begged Khazar not to poison the Earth's biosphere with isotope E out of compassion for the suffering it would cause. He tried to aid Magneto in reversing the effects of M-Day. He delayed an attack on the Silver Surfer to allow him time to save the life of Susie Endo, who would briefly become his herald. Though made personally wealthy by uranium deposits, the High Evolutionary has also provided for a generous financial trust for the people of Transia, ensuring economic stability for the nation. In other media, television, the High Evolutionary appeared in the X-Men animated series, voiced by James Blendick. In the episode Savage Land, Savage Heart PT2, he had a non-voiced appearance in a flashback. Later in the episode Family Ties, the High Evolutionary is shown to be the master of Wundagore. When Quicksilver and Scarlet which came to Wundagore to find Lady Bova, he was unsure it was them at first until he used his machine to find out it was them. After Lady Bova reveals that Magneto is responsible for the twins' mother's death. When Magneto is taken down, the High Evolutionary's New Men restrain Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. When Wolverine attacked, knockout gas filled the area causing Wolverine, Magneto, Quicksilver, and Scarlet Witch to become the High Evolutionary's prisoners. He seeks to create a superior generation of his new men by using mutant DNA, mutating humans into beast-like beings instead of experimenting on animals. He sets up a trap to capture Magneto. After he reveals that fact and mentions to Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch that Magneto is the twins' father, he takes Wolverine and uses his genetic machine to turn Wolverine into a werewolf-like monster. When Professor X and Beast arrived in Wundagore, the High Evolutionary instructed his new men to bring Beast to him. After a brief fight with the X-Men, the High Evolutionary escapes with his new men. The effects he caused on the valley his fortress was and were reversed, as was Wolverine's transformation. The High Evolutionary appeared as a principal villain in Spider-Man Unlimited, voiced by Richard Newman. Disgusted with the behavior of humans on Earth, this version believed that a greater genetic diversity heightens survival traits. He departed Earth for CounterEarth to begin anew, but found the same destructive tendencies in their humans as had plagued those he left behind. The High Evolutionary then proceeded to create a new society, with his human/animal creatures loyal only to him, called bestials, half humans, half animals. The High Evolutionary also created an elite squad of bestials called the Knights of Wundagore, consisting of Sir Ram, Lord Tiger, Lady Ursula, and Lady Vermin, that can also use the Machine Men as law enforcers to keep the humans in order. The New York City on CounterEarth is divided vertically, with humans living on the bottom and the bestials living miles above the street, ruling with an iron fist. The High Evolutionary's plan was simple: to turn this planet into an earthly paradise, no matter what it takes until Spider-Man and the symbiotes led by Venom and Carnage arrived. The episode Sins of the Fathers revealed that the High Evolutionary is the grandfather of Karen O'Malley, who he experimented on when Karen was young. The High Evolutionary was injured during the series finale in a fight against Spider-Man, a heroic Green Goblin, and the rebellion led by Karen and John Jameson. The High Evolutionary appears in the Superhero Squad show, voiced by Jonathan Frakes. In the episode The Devil Dinosaur, You Say, Wolverine encounters the High Evolutionary on Dinosaur World. The High Evolutionary promises to help Wolverine get back to Earth if Wolverine helps him capture Devil Dinosaur in exchange. It is revealed that he plans to sell all the primitive tribes, including Moon Boy, to make a profit, as he comments that humanoids shouldn't coexist with dinosaurs. Devil Dinosaur and Wolverine later storm the High Evolutionary's ship, which results in the tribesmen getting free and the headquarters being destroyed, but the High Evolutionary escapes from Dinosaur World in his escape pod. The High Evolutionary appears in Hulk and the Agents of SMASH, voiced by Corey Burton. At some point in the future, a gamma meteor struck Earth when the agents of SMASH weren't around. This caused humanity to regress back to the primitive times until the High Evolutionary was able to be their salvation by turning them into animal men. When the agents of SMASH arrived in this time in the episode Future Shock, thanks to Leader tricking Scar into going into a temporal distortion wormhole, they end up attacked by some lizard men until the High Evolutionary arrived, where he explained what happened to Earth. Afterwards, the High Evolutionary traps the Hulk in an energy cage and devolves the agents of SMASH. The High Evolutionary retreats with Hulk upon finding that Scar can't be devolved. Upon some advice from Leader, who is trapped on bathroom duty after tricking Scar, Scar leads the devolved teammates into finding the High Evolutionary's lair. At his lair, the High Evolutionary uses his evolution chamber to evolve Hulk into a smarter appearance that has bat-like wings. When Scar and the devolved teammates attack the High Evolutionary's lair, the evolved Hulk turns on the High Evolutionary, stating that he would be superior to the High Evolutionary. Scar and Hulk fought the High Evolutionary after Scar had evolved Red Hulk in the evolution chamber. After a bomb and She-Hulk are evolved, the High Evolutionary devolved Hulk back to his own original state. Scar ends up destroying the High Evolutionary's staff, where its power regresses the High Evolutionary to a baby, which ends up in the care of the arriving lizard men. The agents of SMASH then return to their own time to make sure that they get back to Earth and prevent the gamma meteor from impacting Earth. They succeed in destroying the gamma meteor in the episode Enter the Maestro with the unlikely help of Maestro, which prevents the High Evolutionary's future from happening. The High Evolutionary appears in the Guardians of the Galaxy animated series, voiced by Nolan North. In the episode Evolution Rock, he and his insectoid creations have captured Rocket Raccoon, Groot, and Captain Marvel to experiment on and gain access to the sarcophagus artifact on Thanos' asteroid. He ended up fighting the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy. When the High Evolutionary opens the sarcophagus, he, his hybrids, and his ship get sucked in. In the episode Right Place, Wrong Time, the High Evolutionary is shown within the realm inside the sarcophagus, working to get his ship to survive the freezing temperatures as a result of the sarcophagus being thrown into a cryovolcano. In addition, the High Evolutionary has Yondu as his prisoner as he plans to experiment. Gamora and Nebula had to work together to get away from the High Evolutionary and his hybrids. In the episode You Can't Always Get What You Want, the High Evolutionary is still trapped in the Dark Gem of Adam Warlock. He makes a deal with Rocket Raccoon to leave Warlock if he re-evolves his family on Half-World. After being attacked by Groot, of which it happens with Warlock, its ship manages to leave its dark gem and glides to capture Warlock. The High Evolutionary was frustrated by Rocket after he detonated the High Evolutionary's ship to ensure it would fall down to Earth. Video games. The High Evolutionary appears in Marvel Avengers Alliance. He is seen in Spec Ops #21, where he, Mr. Sinister, the Lizard, and Stegron end up in a power struggle against Sauron and AIM in the Savage Land. The High Evolutionary is also responsible for using Isominus 8 on some dinosaurs, resulting in the creation of the Isosaurs. Novel. The High Evolutionary is one of the villains involved in the plot of the novel Avengers, Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Dan Abnett. The Evolutionary is gathering components for a massive gamma bomb with the intention of irradiating the world with a precisely calculated mutation that will make the human race more susceptible to outside control, such as himself. He attempts to convince Bruce Banner to side with him after Banner is part of a SHIELD team investigating his activities by providing a cure for the Hulk, but Banner merely feigns agreement with the plan until he can confirm what to strike to do the most damage, threatening to trigger a transformation into the Hulk unless the Evolutionary stands down.